Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is being slammed this morning after she criticized fellow freshman lawmaker and war hero Dan Crenshaw. You refuse to co-sponsor the 9/11 Victims Compensation Fund, yet have the audacity to drum resentment toward Ilhan without completely out-of-context quotes. She writes, in 2018, right-wing extremists were behind almost all U.S. domestic terrorist killings. Why don't you go do something about that? She writes. This stemming from a controversy started by Congresswoman Ilhan Omar, who said some people did something, referring to 9/11. Some people did something. Yes, we lost 2,977 Americans on that fateful day. Joining us right now is former Pennsylvania Governor, Ballard Spahr Special Counsel, and former DNC Chairman, Governor Ed Rendell. Governor, it's always a pleasure to see you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning, Maria.
You've got an opportunity right now to denounce Alexandria Ocasio and Ilhan Omar's comments being anti-Semite and all the rest. You have an opportunity right now to denounce them. Go ahead.
Well, I said when Omar made her first comments about all about the Benjamins referring to Jews in America, I said that was worthy of condemning by name. She should have been condemned by name because as an American Jew, I can tell you there's nothing more hurtful to us than having us linked to money and saying all we care about is money. That's the holy grail when it comes to insulting Jews. So I think she should have been taken to the woodshed by name and that time, and I was disappointed that the Democratic caucus didn't do that. And all of this recent stuff, look, we're forgetting what Congress is supposed to do. Congress is not a battleground. It is not a debating society. It is trying to get things done. And insulting fellow members, whether they're right or wrong, that type of rhetoric, attacking fellow members, isn't going to produce anything valuable in terms of moving bills on infrastructure, on immigration reform, on repairing the ACA. We've got a lot of serious work to do in Congress, and we shouldn't get involved in name-calling. Justified or not justified, it doesn't produce one good thing.
I agree with you, but why is she attacking 9/11 victims? Why is she making light of the worst terrorist attack America has ever seen? All of us are very hurt by this. We were there on 9/11. You know how hurt we all were. You were hurt. What do you want to say about what Alexandria Ocasio said about 9/11? Omar said somebody did something?
Yeah, it's incomprehensible. We know what happened. Muslim terrorists, and this doesn't condemn all Muslims, but Muslim terrorists attacked the United States and caused almost 3,000 deaths. A lot of them died in Pennsylvania, in western Pennsylvania, in a field. I remember watching that day when people jumped from the 103rd floor because the heat behind them was so intense. It's a day that I will never forget, and most Americans won't. And to minimize it in any way is just dead wrong.
But what you see, Governor, is Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez trying to turbocharge the outrage. And I've said this before, desperation is the world's worst perfume. And it seems like that it's not enough just to back away from comments, that you have to turn up the outrage and the anger, if you will, because there is no civility. But what she said about Congressman Dan Crenshaw is really incomprehensible. So she's accusing Crenshaw, who served combat tours in Iraq and in Afghanistan, and if she hasn't taken a look at him, he lost an eye. So she's asserting that after 9/11, he hasn't done enough for the victims of those terrorist attacks on that day. And that is just... This needs broad condemnation. And another thing, the fact that Ilhan Omar, any criticism of what she says, not just by her, but others, her allies, any criticism of what she says is immediately called an incitement of violence. That also needs to stop, because again, you're using your gender and who you are as a sword and a shield, to quote the Wall Street Journal, and that's got to end.
No, and I agree with that, but all of this stuff has got to end. But Maria can tell you, I am not a media basher by any means. But the media bears a little responsibility for this because they give AOC and Omar, every word they said gets publicized. We elected 4 women congressmen, new women congressmen in southeastern Pennsylvania. They're all smart, they're all mature, they're all experienced, they're all qualified, and not one thing they've said about any issues, and they've said some interesting things, has been published anywhere in the national press.
You have a big issue.
National press.
The moderates in the Democratic Party have a big issue here because you are being, hijacked by this kind of talk, James. I mean, and it's not just comments like this. It's also the actual policies like the Green New Deal and Medicare for All.
I think that's the point here, that it's not just a media decision to give attention to freshman lawmakers who are normally backbenchers. The Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez Green New Deal was endorsed by every Senate Democrat running for president. These are influential people in the Democratic Party. This is a problem, right? This is not the media overcovering them. This is basically a fringe group of lawmakers who right now are, like Bernie Sanders, exercising a lot of influence over Democratic policy.
But you have to look at the poll that was in the New York Times at the beginning of the week, showing that the rank and file Democrats, the vast majority of Democrats, are moderate, slightly left of center individuals. They don't want this type of rhetoric. They want to get things done. They want to be able to work and attack the problems, the real problems that are facing America. And that's the problem. The problem is we focus on the Twitterverse. We focus on what the Beltway people say. We don't go out and listen to real people.
Yeah.
We made a big deal about what Joe Biden did. The vast amount of Democrats, 80, 90%, thought it wasn't anything that would change their opinion one iota.
No, but Governor, that's the way we covered the Joe Biden comments. I think that certainly from my perspective, very fair.
Yeah.
In terms of the people who spoke out in favor of him.
I'm not saying you were unfair.
But I want to add,
people didn't care about it. Yeah.
But I want to. I'll back up what you said, that the Democrats took 40 seats in the House and retook the House because of the moderates, particularly who won in the Midwest. And Nancy Pelosi has very subtly and quietly tried to tell these kind of extreme freshmen in her party that
back down,
the Green Dream, and she's subtly trying to send a message to them that this is not how you keep the House less than 2 years from now.
And Governor,
I wouldn't want Nancy Pelosi's job for all the money in the world.
Well,
She's Nancy Pelosi can take care of herself. She's plenty tough. I think that she showed the world
no
that.
Question.
Governor Rendell, just quickly, as I listen to the rhetoric that comes out of a lot of the Democrats, and just so you know, I've been a lifelong Democrat. I don't consider myself a Democrat anymore because I see a party now that has a double standard that they have really taken on as the culture. If half of the things were said by someone on the right, they would all stand up against them. And now it seems like every time one of these ladies make a comment, they're given a pass. But at the same time, all they want to do is point out the fact that our country's being more divided because people that support Trump are dividing the country. And that rhetoric has to stop, because if you look and you listen really hard at what these ladies are trying to do and the messages that they're putting out, it's so divisive. But it's divisive, but like Dagan said, behind a shield. And for me, that's worse.
Well, I think your point is well taken. And in fact, I denounced when Republicans like the Secretary of DHS went out for dinner with her family, and I assume progressive Democrats started yelling at her in the restaurant. That stuff has no place in American politics. We've got to get back to some level of civility. But I do blame the president because the tone is set at the top, and he is setting a horribly divisive tone. Now, that doesn't excuse our congresspeople who speak out and say things that make no sense, that are hateful or divisive. But the tone is set by the top. When I was governor, I set the tone on every major issue that confronted Pennsylvania.
Yeah, well, there's no secret that the whole media landscape hates the guy and attacks him morning, noon, and night. But you point well taken. Maybe as the president, he should not respond to that. Governor, real quick, on the policy front, what's the easiest thing to get done between Republicans and Democrats next 2 years, if anything?
Infrastructure, and we need to do it desperately.
Yeah.
Infrastructure. Everybody should bite the bullet, invest the money we need to repair the American infrastructure.
And Nancy Pelosi said yesterday she wants an infrastructure plan totaling $2 trillion.